Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2024 inaugural Pioneer Valley Tip-Off Selection Show presented by the Oak View Group. My name is John Ruggiero alongside Jonathan Mergita and Justin Schwartz. But this selection show is brought to you by the McCormack High School program. But guys, we have a great slate of games for you beginning Friday, December 13th. That'll be taking you through Sunday night. So how are we all feeling about this year's PVTO, guys?
Fired up.
I'm excited. Can't wait. 10 good matchups on the men's and women's side, boys and girls. I'm excited. Can't wait.
And with that, let's get right into it and take a look at the first matchup of this year's PVTO. And it's going to be the Amherst girls versus the Northampton girls. That'll tip off Friday, December 13th at 7 p.m. And guys, these two teams met last PVTO back in 2023. The final score was 69-40 in favor of Northampton. And for last year, these two teams had a bit of a different story. The Northampton girls went 20-5, while Amherst went 4-16. So what were some strengths and weaknesses for both teams?
I think Northampton's figuring out its groove. It's the first time they've went over 500 in the past 10 years and over 10 years. So this team has been through its struggles, it's had its hardships, it's rebuilding its franchise, its team, and it's going to work now, which I like.
Yeah, and Northampton really was aggressive defensively last year. That was the name of their game. They didn't really give Amherst too much room on offense, and it really showed as Amherst finished shooting only 33% on all their shots last year. So definitely key to their success this year is going to be repeating that. Really holding Amherst to very limited shots and seeing how that plays out.
In a similar way, just talking about Northampton, I think Amherst, had a dominant season 2 years ago, going 18-6. Last year, they went 4-16. So it was a complete flip to 2 years ago. So they got to once again rebuild to what they had 2 years ago and try to take a win back on Friday night.
Yeah, and Amherst, they're going through a little bit of an adjustment period. They're a relatively young team coming into this year. They are really looking they only have two seniors, Niyama Adendona and Nina Chinapa. Both of them, they're going to be Amherst is going to be looking to lead their offense through them, and we'll see how that plays out. One of Amherst's biggest strengths last year in their PVTO matchup was their free throw shooting, as they went 9 for 13 from the free throw charity stripe. So we'll see, if they can get to the line, seeing if that can make a difference this year.
And one of the weaknesses, I think, for Amherst was they just kind of ran the same plays and kind of rushed things offensively. So in basketball, how important is it to sort of make up different plays, and especially against a very good Northampton team? You got to get a little creative, right?
Yeah, I mean, these teams, they're not strangers. They play every year. And so coaches realize and understand that. They base, their future matchups based on their previous matchups. So it's very important for Amherst to sort of change things up. I mean, both teams, but really Amherst, because as I mentioned earlier, their offense ran through those two seniors through seniors that graduated. They're looking, like I said, they have a relatively young team. And, they need to, get creative, move the ball around, seeing if that helps.
I mean, you can't get too creative, right? I think a lot of coaches play to their playbook, right? At UMass, you have Don Brown. He has a very Don Brown style playbook, right? He doesn't change his playbook that much. And sure, you can talk about how UMass football is struggling to find its wins, right? But I think it's still that coaching aspect where coach has his playbook. It's going to work. There might be a little tweaks in the playbook, but they're not going to run a completely different style of offense or defense when they come back to the Mullen Center in the middle of December.
It'll definitely be a tough matchup for Amherst going up against Northampton, at least on the girls' side, coming into this PVTO tournament. But now let's shift to the boys' side of things. It'll be Amherst boys versus Northampton boys. That'll tip off at 8:45 p.m. to end our Friday night on December 13th. And last year for these two teams, Amherst, they went 9-12, and Northampton went a perfect 500, 11-11. And in the matchup last year, Amherst defeated Northampton by a score of 63-54 So definitely a competitive matchup last year.
Yeah, I mean, I know you were here last year, so can you give us anything you remember from that game?
Yes, I mean, towards the end of it, Amherst ended up pulling away. Of course, they won by 9 points, and it was gritty and tough performance for both teams. Uh, Marcelo Aquino won Player of the Game, 31 points for him, and some of their strengths were their shooting, especially early in the game, and that was what really won Amherst the game, their shooting. The defense was also great, of course. In a 9-point game, defense is ultra important, and that comes against a very aggressive Northampton team. One of their biggest strengths was their aggressive style of defense, and that came up in their advantage. And of course, some of their weaknesses was just playing a lot of minutes through Silas Cole, not really using a lot of the players across the 5 starters. So definitely some things to keep in mind for Northampton. Of course, they were defeated by a team that went on to go and be 9-12 in Amherst. So definitely some things to improve this year for Northampton.
I mean, I think Northampton's aggressive on both sides of the court, right? Offensively and defensively. This is something we saw last year, where Amherst gave up 16 offensive rebounds to Northampton. Second chance opportunities were really good for them. It kept them in the game, and it brought the game all the way down to the fourth quarter. If Northampton could do that again, where they're following their shots, crashing the boards, getting offensive rebounds, they could make this game very, very competitive, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to just mention, like you said, following your shots is one of the earliest things that you learn when you're playing basketball. And you don't really see it too much today, but it is really one of the most important things that you can do offensively. It's real, like you said, Amherst gave up 16 offensive rebounds to Northampton, and I know that Amherst ultimately ended up winning by 9 points, but second chance points, that's one of the most underrated stats that coaches really lean on, because that shows if their team's following their shots, and ultimately the team who follows their shots and gets those second chance points typically are the ones who come out on the winning side.
And one thing that stood out to me really specific for Northampton was the second quarter of that game, where they only scored 4 points in that game. I mean, everyone talks about needing to put points on the board. It's the only way you can win a game of basketball is by scoring. And for an entire quarter, only putting up 4 points, it kind of hurt them. And one thing your coach says in halftime is the most important minutes in a game are the first 5 minutes of the third quarter, because it's how we're setting the pace for the second half. Coming out of the halftime break, it sets the pace for the second half, whether we're going to be back in this game or not. And they turned it around, right? They went back and they had a lead at one point in the third quarter, so they were able to turn that around. But being consistent in all 4 quarters is really something that Northampton's going to want to do this time around.
Consistency is definitely key when it comes to that matchup, and I think that might be one of the best matchups of this tournament. Of course, we are in Amherst, but moving on, now we will shift to Agawam girls and West Springfield girls. That'll tip off at 5 o'clock on Saturday evening. And last season for those two teams, West Springfield girls, they went 3-16, a bit of a tough year for Belinda McDonald, the head coach. But Agawam on the other side, they were able to have a winning record, 13-8. They went 9-1 in the Central Conference. So it's definitely going to be a bit of a tough matchup for West Springfield.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, West Springfield 3-16 last season, 2-18 the season before that. Right, 2017 to 2018 season was the last season they had with a positive over 500 record. This team has, one star that I really like a lot is Kelsey Turner. She stands out to me. She had 70 points last season, led the team in points, led the team in free throw shooting. If she's able to be a leader on the court, support her teammates, lead the team on both sides, I could see West Springfield making this competitive, pulling out a win. I don't see why not.
Yeah, and just to add to your point about Kelsey Turner, she was second on the team in their 3-pointers made. She had 5. So, we're looking to see if West Springfield can utilize her from behind the arc, because, 3-point shooting is very important in games like these. And we're also going to look to see about Morgan Peabody. She is going to be a junior this season, I believe, and last season, she finished with just under 5 points a game. So we're looking to see her step into more of a leadership type of role. seeing if her and along with Kelsey Turner can help West Springfield sort of turn things around. As you said, it's been a long time since they have finished over 500.
And it looks like West Springfield specifically will have 3 seniors on their team. How important is it to have senior leadership, especially in a year where you want to sort of rebound after a 3-16 season?
I mean, seniors, they know the coaches' play style the best, right? Unless they're a transfer. But, I mean, seniors on the team are the role models of the team. You know, the freshmen that go onto the team, they are learning the fundamentals of this new coaching style. They're learning the fundamentals of what it's like to play high school basketball. So the seniors are meant to be the role models on that court. And if the seniors aren't, it trickles down to the juniors, sophomores, freshmen. So these 3 seniors really have to be leaders in order to, set the foundation and the fundamentals for this team for the next few years.
Yeah, just to sort of add off of that point, seniors not only on the court but off the court are also the role models. When I was playing sports in high school, I was looking to the seniors to sort of lead by example, both on and off the court, how you conduct yourself, how you go about doing your work outside of practice, all of that thing. But it's also, it's very important that they're the ones who lead sort of team bonding. That is something that's very important because stuff like that translates to how you play on the court. If you know your teammates, you want to fight for the person beside you, you're gonna have more fun, and more fun typically transfers to playing better. And a lot of the times that means you're gonna do better.
And I think something that I want to note here, right? We're talking about maybe a bad record for West Springfield, but they won 2 out of their last 3 games to end the season. Right? That just shows that there's something there with this team, winning your 2 out of your last 3. Because if, in theory, right, if a team is building together, going through its struggles, over time, they're making team chemistry. Like, team chemistry is eventually just going to happen. And if that's the case, I think with West Springfield specifically, I'm seeing that a lot more specifically.
It'll definitely be a good matchup on the girls' side of things, but once again, we'll shift to the boys. It'll be Agawam and West Springfield Friday night, 7 o'clock here at the Mullen Center. And similar story for the West Springfield boys team. They went 4-16 to finish their last season. And for Agawam, they went 12-9. So similar stories between both of these programs coming into this PVTO tournament.
Yeah, and their star, Anthony Curran, just graduated in June. 210 points he had over a 19-game period. And I think that's something we have to talk about a lot is, in the NBA, players retire and, that's it. High school and college, it's, 4 years, maybe 5 in college. That's it, though, right? And you have to depend now on somebody else. How important is that to now, when you have a star player that graduates, to now have to depend maybe on somebody else?
And it's really, to answer that question, it's really all about that next man up mentality. You see it a lot in the professionals. You'll see, maybe like a star player's out, and you'll see some role player who you don't know too much about suddenly go off and puts up like 30 points in a game. And, it's really about finding who, who's maybe not in as big of a role when they do get that opportunity, because it might not happen every night. But when it does happen, really taking advantage of that.
Star players are certainly what West Springfield is trying to develop. And 4-16, that is not exactly where they want to be. But similarly to the girls' team, Jonathan, they won 2 out of their last 3. So momentum building for West Springfield, perhaps.
And it's on both sides, I guess. And that's something that I really think West Springfield, on both sides, both the girls and the boys, something their teams are going to have to think of, notice, right, going into the season. It's a long season. It's 19, 20, 21 games. It's not a sprint, right? It's a long season. You're going to have your tough matchups. You're going to have your games where you just lose, right? You don't play well. Shots aren't falling. You're not falling back on defense. That just happens, right? That's just basketball. So it's a matter of how can you play throughout the season, learn from your mistakes, develop as a team. That's what's going to make a team good and great.
And we're going to take a quick break before, when we come back, we'll get into the rest of the matchups on Sunday. But let's hear from the sponsors real quick.
Want a view behind the scenes of sport management? Join the McCormack Sport Leadership Academy to get a glimpse at your dream career in sports. Learn more by visiting the McCormack Sport Leadership Academy on the Eisenberg website.
Welcome back to the PVTO Selection Show, and we're going to keep getting right into these matchups here. We're going to shift to Sunday That is December 15th. It's all going to start at 9 a.m. with East Hampton girls versus Frontier girls. And that'll be a good matchup. At least I have circled on my PVTO calendar. You have Frontier going 17-5 last season. And then you have East Hampton going 14-7. And East Hampton, they did play in the PVTO tournament last year. That was against the Hampshire girls. They won 42-33, a 9-point win by the Eagles. And some of their strengths were defensive side of the ball strengths, getting turnovers on the defensive end, 8 turnovers in the first quarter. That was something to watch out on East Hampton. And a couple of their weaknesses were converting at the free throw line. 7 of 13 free throws converted for East Hampton. How important is it to convert it on free throws during a close game like that?
I think free throws, they make a huge impact, whether or not you're going to win a game or not, right? Similar to how people say defense wins games. I mean, I would never make that claim because I don't think, having a good defense, you need also a good offense and making free throws. Like, it's just pieces to the puzzle, and completing the puzzle is just winning the game. So I'll never make that claim. But what I will say is, going 75% from a free throw line definitely helps, right? It's not going to hurt to go good from a free throw line, and that you just need it, right? So I think going strong from the free throw line just is another piece, an element to the success of a team, 100%.
Yes, definitely. And as for Frontier, of course, I said 17-5. Their record last season, junior Claire Kirkendall, she averaged just under 10 points per game for Frontier. She is definitely someone to watch out for heading into this matchup on Sunday morning. And now let's shift to the boys side of things. It's East Hampton boys versus Frontier boys. That'll tip off at 10:50 a.m., of course, on Sunday morning. And for East Hampton, at least their record compared to the girls isn't exactly where they want it to be. 3-17 last season under head coach Nick Whitney. But as for Frontier, they went 11-11. So perfect 500, at least for Frontier. East Hampton, they played in last year's PVTO tournament. They lost just by 4 points also to Hampshire. And some of the weaknesses for East Hampton was they had a different story in the second half. They were up late and they just ran out of gas, weren't able to finish the game. So during a season, it's a pretty long season for these young players in the high school basketball games, 20-game season. How important is it to play the full game, especially when you're up early?
I think playing the full game makes a huge difference, right? A coach can tell you can be up 20 points or you can be up 2 points. You still got to play basketball, right? That lead could go down in a snap of a finger, and we saw that, right? We literally saw that happen last year where they were up going into halftime, and what ended up happening is they went down on a 32-17 run, and just like that, they lost by 4 points. So you need to play 4 quarters of basketball, right? And if you play 4 quarters of basketball, establish the fundamentals and keep the fundamentals going, following your shot, boxing out on defense, passing the ball, good ball movement, stuff like that, it's going to make a difference whether you win the game or you lose.
Yes, definitely. And for Frontier, Owen Babb, he averaged just under 20 points per game. He will be a senior center for the Frontier team. He is definitely someone to watch out for heading into this one under coach Josh Morse.
Yeah, and he finished last season with 352 points, just over 20 points a game. So they're going to look to run their offense through him. Having a big man as dominant as he is definitely something that Frontier is going to have to lean on in order to have a successful season.
And that should be a good matchup, of course, tipping off at 10:50 a.m. on Sunday. Now let's head to 12:40 p.m. on Sunday. It'll be Pittsfield boys versus East Longmeadow boys. And that should be, yet again, another great matchup during this PVTO tournament. Pittsfield went 19-6 last year under head coach Jerome Edgerton. And East Longmeadow not far behind them, going 13-8 under head coach Brendan Avad. And boy, that should be a good matchup. 2 sort of heavyweights coming into that game certainly should be a fun one.
Oh, absolutely. And it seems that Pittsfield's new coaching has really been something that's been working for them. Under this new head coach, Jerome, they have done 36-11 since he's been head coach over the last 2 seasons when he came into the program. I think that's something that we need to watch, his coaching style and how they play, because it's something that works. It's changed the program a lot for basketball, and something that I think for Pittsfield is working completely.
Yeah, and sometimes, you get a new coach in there and completely changes everything for good or for worse, but this clearly has been working out for good. And, that's really important, because a new coach, for those players who have already been there, having a new coach come in sort of changes a lot. But it's very important that that coach establishes a good connection with those players early, so that way they can start building, chemistry, and players can start buying into the coach's principles and what he wants for the team.
But as for East Longmeadow, Noah Enriquez Davis, he was a freshman last year, and he put up just under 10 points per game. So it seems like having a young player like him certainly fires up the team and is able to get them some wins.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's also the fact that he had players around him, where he had Mike Felipe, who graduated though, but he put up 312 points, right? That's a lot of points too, over the same amount of game period. So I think when you have, a teammate on your side, like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, right? You have like that assist, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, that dynamic duo going, it helps a lot. I don't know if that will be the same this season. Something to watch, something to see, who's going to step up to the plate, who's going to make that happen. But I would be very interested to see how the team chemistry takes place now, even though there's some seniors that have graduated.
You'll find out at 12:40 p.m. on December 15th. And right after that one at 2:30 p.m., you'll have Pittsfield and East Longmeadow girls going up against each other. And that should be yet another good matchup. Pittsfield girls went 15-7 during that season, and East Longmeadow went 9-11. So Pittsfield, for them, they played in the PVTO tournament last season, and they played against Westfield, and they absolutely dominated that game, winning 60-25, more than double the score of Westfield. And the Generals had great defensive intensity, running that 3-2 zone and often pressuring Westfield on a full court press, and I think that's what won them the game. So definitely a strengthful Pittsfield team.
Yeah, and I know it was mentioned earlier that it's not always, you can't really say that defense wins championships, but defense definitely does win you some games. And when you're coming out and immediately doing a full court press and running a 3-2 zone, and really just taking away all the offensive opportunities for the other team, that's going to win you some games. And I mean, we saw it last year with Pittsfield winning 60-25. So we're looking to see if they can keep up the defensive intensity this year, this time around. And just another note on Pittsfield, they have 5 returning players who put up over 100 points last season. So that means, offensively, we were talking about their defense, but offensively, they do have some people who can shoot, and, they don't just run their offense through 1 or 2 players. They can run through 5 or 7 players. So we're looking to see how Pittsfield plays this year.
Oh, absolutely. But I think what also is interesting for Pittsfield is in that game last year, they had forced 34 turnovers, right? That's something that's a crazy thing to think about. 34 turnovers in a basketball game. You're reducing 34 potential shots, field goal attempts. You're reducing 34 shots that could be 3-pointers, right? You don't know what you're risking when, the potential points that comes from 34 turnovers. So, but when you think about it this year, it's a whole different team. It's a whole different matchup. How is the other team going to come into this matchup against Pittsfield? Are they going to have a good press break? Are they going to be able to break down that press that Pittsfield has so strong and dominant? And if they are they going to be able to reduce the amount of turnovers? Are they going to have the same amount of communication errors as we saw last year? It's something that we're going to have to watch.
And a player to watch, I think, for East Longmeadow is going to be Grace Moore. She is a rising junior. She averaged just under 10 points per game in her sophomore season for East Longmeadow, so keep an eye on her during that PVTO game, of course, tipping off at 2:30 on Sunday, December 5th. That's it for Pittsfield versus East Longmeadow. And after this break, we're going to head right into the Chicopee versus Chicopee Comp matchups. Stay tuned for that.
Want a view behind the scenes of sport management? Join the McCormack Sport Leadership Academy to get a glimpse at your dream career in sports. Learn more by visiting the McCormack Sport Leadership Academy on the Eisenberg website.
Welcome back to the PVTO Selection Show. We've got two more matchups to reveal on this show, and it's going to be Chicopee versus Chicopee Comp girls. That'll tip off at 4:20 p.m. on Sunday night, and that should be a good matchup. Chicopee last season, the Pacers, they went 2-18 under head coach Molly Burke, and Chicopee Comp, they had a better season for themselves, 13-8 for the Colts under head coach Tony Couture. And last season, these two teams matched up during the PVTO tournament, and it was Chicopee Comp coming out on top, winning 54-42 in that matchup. And some of the strengths, at least for Comp, in the first quarter, they ended up being down by 5, but they came back from that and had a massive flip, turning on the Jets to storm past Chicopee to eventually win, of course. And Chicopee, they started out very slow, had a couple turnovers on each side of the court. So, guys, turnovers just in your own half of the court, that just cannot happen if you're Chicopee.
Oh, absolutely, it can happen. And, when you have a shot clock, right, sometimes, you feel like you're pressured to try to rush an offensive play because you got 24, 30 seconds. But at the high school level, there's usually not a shot clock. It depends, I guess, on conference or division or state rules. But, if you don't have a shot clock, and even if you do have a shot clock, it's still fundamentals, right? Good ball movement, looking down the court, creating open space, stuff like that, that really is what, again, establishes a good team from a great team.
Aubrey Jo Doohan, I hope I'm saying that correctly, the freshman for Chicopee, she averaged just under 10 points a game for herself for the Pacers. Keep an eye out on her during this PVTO tournament. And on the comp side, they've had plenty of good players, but one player that catches my eye is Taryn Caraveau. She averaged over 20 points per game during her junior season. She's going to be a senior this year, so watch out for her heading into this tournament. And now the final matchup of the PVTO tournament of 2024 is Chicopee Comp versus Chicopee boys. And Chicopee Comp last season, they went 14-7 under head coach Gavin Miller. Chicopee, they went 15-5. And of course, these two teams also played last year. It was Chicopee Comp coming out on top, 59-37. And Chicopee Comp, their strong suit was their shooting. They had a very high field goal percentage, the highest in last year's tournament. So that was something good for the Colts. And as for the Pacers, their defensive rebounding was a strong suit for them. So for the Pacers, it was tough sledding last year, of course, only winning 5 games, and Comp dominated that game. So it's going to be tough for the Pacers.
Oh, absolutely. But, you could look at last season's stats and, say these are all players to watch, but you got to know it's a new season, right? And it doesn't have to be with new coaching or, new freshmen. It doesn't matter, right? It's just a new season. And that's the mindset you have to go into, whether you're Chicopee or Chicopee Comp, right? It's a new season, clean slate, and only one team is going to win at the Mullen Center.
Yeah, and just to build off of that, I mentioned earlier about the next man up mentality. That can carry over into a new season. So if you have a player who finished off the season last year doing well, that hopefully that momentum can carry over to the next season. But it's also important, like you just said, go into the new season clean slate. You're getting a chance to start over. Season starts, everyone's 0-0 as their record.
And it goes further than that, right? Even if you had a losing record, if you have a winning record, same mindset, right? It's a new season. Don't let that get to your head. Don't think, we went undefeated last season. That means we're going to go undefeated this season. there is no correlation between the two, right?
Yeah.
Zero correlation.
Last season's last season, this season is this
Correct. Exactly.
That game will end the PVTO tournament, tipping off at 6:10 p.m. on December 15th. And that wraps up the selection show. But before we end the show, guys, I just want to hear from either of you, and I'll give my own take on this as well. What is your favorite matchup you're looking forward to going into this year? Well, let's start with you, Justin.
I'm personally looking forward to seeing East Hampton versus Frontier on the girls' side. You know, both teams finished over 500 last year and dominated, might I add. So we're looking to see a really, you know, high-powered offense meet a high-powered offense, and we're going to see, you know, how you know which offense comes out on the better end.
Jonathan, what do you got?
You know, I'm going to end up going with Chicopee Comp versus Chicopee. I'm going to go with the boys' side, right? I think with this matchup specifically, I think it's interesting because it's a rematch from last year. I think it's the last match that ends the entire weekend. So a lot of stakes there, right? It's the closing, you know, the closing curtain call, so to say. So I'm very interested to see how that game goes. I'll be on commentary for that, so I can't wait. So I'm looking forward to that game the most.
The Battle of Chicopee is always fun. And at least for me, my favorite matchup is going to be Amherst boys versus Northampton. The Amherst crowd always comes out to the Mullins Center, and that provides a great atmosphere. And, of course, Northampton isn't too far away themselves, and both teams were about mid of the pack last season, so that should be a fierce matchup for this PVTO tournament. Guys, we had a great selection show. Thanks for joining me. I'm John Ruggiero, Jonathan Merguita, and Justin Schwartz. Stay tuned. December 13th is when all the action starts here at the Mullins Center. We hope to see you there.